export for web in Photoshop, you can assign a profile for that image. So if you're going to upload it to Facebook or put it on your website, you want to assign the sRGB profile to it. But if you're saving it to your hard drive for use, or so for instance, if it's a master file for an image, then save it as your work, Adobe RGB. You know would work well in most instances.
Right, right. Is there any software you could recommend as well, maybe for like color management workflow?
Well, the tools that DataColor makes, they all come with software mostly. We have the spider checker, which is the capture calibration tool, comes with software that will work with Adobe products, and it'll work with um, Hasselblad Focus software as well. And what that will do is it'll create an auto correction for a file on a reference photo with the color chart in it. Our Spider Cube, which is like a three-dimensional gray card, that doesn't come with software, but that will work with any raw converter where you can adjust, white balance and uh, black black tones and your exposure, that type of thing.
So
Make a
it's like a virtual like gray card basically that kind of stays inside of your software.
Spider Cube is not. No,
Oh, okay.
that's also a location target. So a spider checker, which is the color chip chart, you if you have the time to set it up, or if you're using, or when, like, personally for me, most of my work, I'm not using a spider checker or a color chip chart, or even like the spider cube. And what these capture targets do is it gives you a reference to use in your editing. It's not about capturing, correcting at the point of capture. It's about giving you a reference to use in your editing.
Okay.
When you do sit down at a computer, you can make an edit effectively. Or you can set a custom white balance using a gray card, or the reverse side of a spider checker in camera to do an in-camera white balance. So it's, that would be the use case at capture.
Got it. Okay.
But so the Spider X, the display calibration tools, they will come with. They both have their own software, and the Spider Print, which is the custom printer profile software or
Hmm.
tool, that will come with its own software as well. But you want to be, Lightroom and Photoshop. Really, those are the standards in the industry. But there are also very good. There are also other very good software. I mean, the one is a raw editor that I've used for a long time that I really enjoy using. Affinity Photo is a very good solid product too. And I'm just speaking for the ones that I'm familiar with. But those are all color managed, and those are all just, they offer all the tools that you would need to have to edit color and edit effectively, and the color management tools.
Hmm. So I'm personally a Lightroom user, and I'm curious. Do you think it's enough to get by with Lightroom, or do you think you suggest for like intense color work you go elsewhere and then take it in afterwards?
I mean, Lightroom's a great place to to do your raw editing. So, and then if you need to work on the you know raw, so Lightroom and a raw editor it's non-destructive. So it's not taking the file and altering it. It's creating a sidecar, and it's kind of like, got your main file, and you've got this secondary file that is used to alter the main file. So all the edit, it's like a non-destructive workflow for editing for raw files.
Okay.
Uh, and when a raw or outputs or exports that image, it then at that point it bakes in those corrections, and then then you're working on a pixel level, like in Photoshop or Affinity Photo. and that's when you're playing the file itself. But in a raw editor, you're creating this of adjustments that's applied to the image, but it's not destroying. I'm doing that in quotes. It's not destroying or altering the image. You can always reverse it and go back.
Yeah. Okay.
Where in Photoshop or Affinity Photo, you're kind of relying on going back in history to get to those edits. Whereas in Lightroom or Capture One, you can just erase that sidecar or that secondary.
Okay. So you
file.
can still press Control Z in Affinity and reset the last step. It's not like destructive like all the way. If that's
Yeah. So
okay.
in a pixel for Photoshop, it's an Affinity Photo. It's uh, Affinity Photo has different modules. So one is a raw editor. So you can raw edit within Affinity Photo, but in the pixel-based editor in Affinity Photo, you're relying on the history of what's happened to the file to erase what's gone on. Whereas a raw editor erase that secondary file that was created with your edits. You still have your original raw file is still fully intact.
Got it. Okay.
So can you take the same raw file and like basically allocate multiple ICC profiles and like color spaces to them?
Well, you could theoretically, yeah, but I think what I was talking about previously wasn't about. It was more about the theory of what is a raw processor, what is this like Photoshop or Affinity Photo is, and I wasn't just relating management to those. It was just editing in general and what goes on in those.
Got it. Okay.
Right, right.
Theory, if a raw file does not have an assigned profile, you can, whatever is your working color space, the raw processor, whatever is assigned to, you could, in theory, create multiple instances of that file, and I guess three different different color settings to it. So yeah, I in theory it would work.
Yeah. But ICC kind of covers your whole set of colors, on your monitor more than the individual file. That's what I'm.
So the working color space of an application relates to how the application takes the color information of that file and renders it within the application.
Mm-hmm.
If you're working in Adobe RGB, that means your application is going to use RGB to transform the color information in your file so that you see it in the application. It's kind of like I don't want to call it a filter because it's not a filter. It's how information, your image file is processed to look on within the application.
Mm-hmm.
Like your output profile. So if you're going to apply a profile to as you export, like sRGB, basically it's saying that the file opened up next, it needs to be in such a way that relates to